after what happened last night, who better to turn to than our good friend Zim Whodey? Zim, your thoughts of last night's debacle in Cleveland. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm all right. How you doing?
It's a rough day, man. It feels like it's a weird energy in the air. I don't, condolences out to the Zimmer family.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just some tough stuff, that was a rough loss last night. That was one game, but it was a really, really rough game.
All right, Zim, where do we begin here? Because when I started the show today, I mean, I went through the whole laundry list, right? Coaching, offensive line, the punter, the field goal kicker.
Yeah.
The defense for the first time all year long in the second half gives up a touchdown, but they were dominated. Injuries. When you look at the game last night, and there's a lot to be troubled by, but what troubled you the most? For me, it was the offensive line. What about you?
Same. It was the inability of not even just the offensive line. You might, coming into the season, had you told me that left guard and Bronson was a big issue, I'd be like, yeah, it's a rookie or whatever. But he played fine, But to see Jonah Williams, that might have been Jonah Williams' worst game I've ever seen. Like the crushing part to the Jonah Williams thing is you're almost back to square one in some regards to the offensive line on this everlasting cycle of replacing Andrew Whitworth, right? Even if you didn't win a Super Bowl this year, right? Because you still have a chance to go to playoffs. You still got a lot of different things in front of you. It's very clear that you cannot have a long sustained success with Jonah Williams at this point. He's already relinquished 8 sacks on the season. And to beat the best teams in the NFL, you have to have a left tackle that can consistently win reps against elite pass rushers. And I think the one thing that was like false or fool's gold the last couple of weeks was Jonah Williams and company beating up on less than pass rushers. Starting with the Ravens game. Then you went to see the Saints. And then you saw the Falcons where you don't have a Myles Garrett, a Michael Parsons, or a T.J. Watt. But what are the 3 constants in all 3 of those games? Michael Parsons, T.J. Watt, and Myles Garrett totally destroyed the game. Lyle was bad too. I just thought Jonah Williams was just glaring. Like it just stood out to me. I felt like in every drop back, Burrow felt it. On the flip side of it, the first 3 possessions, I felt like Joe could feel the pressure, but at least he believed he could beat the pressure. By the time he got in the first 3 possessions, you got to think red zone pick, red zone strip sack, McPherson misses a field goal. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like the offense was completely stagnant. It had so many glimpses and resemblance of last year, like every aspect of it, minus the catastrophic injury to your best corner on your team, which is something that I just don't know what they're going to do to come out of it. I have some ideas, but, you can't replace a Cheeto Bay Awuzie, period.
The run game, again. And this starts again with the offensive line. Although, I continue to come back to the coaching and the play calling. The Cleveland Browns defense I brought up earlier. Okay, you give up 30 to the Chargers. You could see how you give up 30 to the Chargers, but they gash the Cleveland defense running the ball. Bailey Zappi scores 38 points against that Cleveland defense for New England. 38. And yet, of the first 21 plays of the game, 17 of the 21 are passes. Now, in fairness to the offensive line, okay, and I've heard a lot of guys talk about this before, guys that play the game, guys that coach the game. Offensive lines can get into a pattern where they're all the time, because you pass so much, you're on your heels all the time, trying to protect the quarterback, rather than taking off and hitting somebody. When you only run the ball 4 times of your first 21 plays, you're not asking your offensive line to go hit anybody and even try the run game. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I'm gonna tell you what my strategy was coming into the game, though. The only thing that can stop Nick Chubb was putting points on the board. We saw that in the Falcons game. The one thing that you could do to a really good run game is score touchdowns, and then it makes the running game null and void, and then you force that team to throw. When the game was 0-0 in those 3 possessions I talked about, I felt like Joe Burrow checked into some passes at the line of scrimmage. You could see him audible to some of those passes. So there's probably like 2 or 3 that are 100%. They're glaring. The one thing that I think from a strategy standpoint is as fans, we always are quick to say, let Joe cook. And there was a period in that game where Joe was dissecting them on 3rd down, and he was cooking, and you can't take the ball out of his hand. What happened is you're like, well, I'm going to just go down the field just like I did in the Saints game, just like I did in the Falcons game. I'm killing them right now. I'm killing them. But then when the turnovers happen, it changes the trajectory of everything that you had planned. So then by the time that you do get the ball back, because now you're facing a running team, so now you have limited possessions. You only had 3 anyway. By the time you get the ball back, now you're down 8-0. Now you know what I'm saying? Now you're down 8. Like, so now you're like, all right, so they were down 8-0. Then the first play they run, it's like a 4 or 5 yard run. But now the clock is ticking, and you're like, dang, I got to go past. I'm in a 2-minute drill. So every chance that you wanted to run, you couldn't even do it because your initial strategy failed. And I thought the number one strategy to stop Nick Chubb was to score touchdowns. And I know that sounds really simple. It sounds kind of silly in a way. But if you have a potent offense and an elite quarterback, it's not a real hard concept to come by. I think in hindsight, we look at a box score and say, bro, I did the same thing at the end of the first half. I'm like, damn, only 5 attempts for Joe Mixon. But I get why. He was in a groove, and it just never really panned out for him. By the time you come back second half, now you're down 18-0. You gotta pass now. Like, you can't, like, running's off the board at that point, especially when you got a quarterback that could go, unless you got a Marcus Mariota and you're just gonna run the ball when you're down 21 points.
Give me reason, or more importantly, give those who are watching reason, and they are dialed in by the thousands. Knowing their schedule, the way this is looking the rest of the way, and we dissected this thing, there are people out there, Zim, looking for hope. Right? I mean, they're looking for hope.
Yeah.
4-4. They're only 1 spot technically out of the playoffs right now. They lose a tiebreak to New England right now. They'll get a chance to change that in head-to-head later in the year. But what hope do you have? Knowing you're not going to change this offensive line, knowing injuries have hit your team for the first time really in 2 years. It looks like significant injuries. You're going to play at least the next 2 to 3 weeks without Jamar Chase. And we saw that outfit last night without him. I don't even know if he'd have made a difference. But where's the hope, Zim? Where is the hope? Where's the hope?
The hope is that you do have a Dax Hill that you're going to have to get up to speed. First-round draft pick. Teams are playing with far less.
But, dude, that guy cannot – Zim, that guy can't play cornerback. Taylor Britt. He can't play. You're talking about Dax Hill. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
you're going to ask a safety to play corner?
He's capable of doing it, and I think with Trey Flowers now probably being out, and then you're hoping you get Eli Apple back, and then you saw what you saw from Cam Taylor Britt last night, I think you got to go Dax Hill on the outside. I think you're playing against a lesser opponent in the Panthers, but they got a wide receiver in DJ Moore that will absolutely destroy you. So you got to be very cautious on how you do it, but that's a Lou Anarumo thing. He's got to figure it out. From an overall standpoint, the thing that bothers me the most, and I told you this on the show, is that I hate the fact that we lost those games early, like the Steelers game, and I thought we would live to regret it. And it's coming to fruition, and I hate speaking on certain things like that and watching them unfold. But I will say this: the Bengals were 5-4 last year. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Chiefs were 3-5 last year as well. There are things that I do believe in, and the one thing that I'll never stop believing in is number 9. Joe Burrow has to adapt like he did at the beginning of the season from his offensive line. They have to figure out a new way. Like I said, there were points in this game where he looked really efficient. They were playing well. Tyler Boyd had the big grab on the sideline. Hayden Hurst had some big plays sprinkled in there when they did give him the opportunity. I think they made the adjustments. You go into the bye, if you can, at 5-4. You were 5-4 last year. The thing that bothers me, the one thing that does bother me is the opponents that you have to face are no slouches. You got Bills and Chiefs. But I think that our team will rise up to the occasion for bigger teams rather than lesser teams. And I think you might split with the Bills and Chiefs. I think the Titans, you get DJ Reader back. So then now you're stopping the run in that game. I think the Steelers, 100% they are trash. And I think that you got to pull that one out. They haven't looked good, so that's another dub. It's hard to count dubs right now when you're coming off a loss that bad, but I just caution everybody, it's one loss. That's how everybody felt when we were 0-2. Everybody got their confidence back on the Saints and the Falcons. And I will tell you some big plays in that game from T. Higgins. There was a pass interference call that wasn't called on the first drive of the game where he had him deep, no call. That's a 40, 50-yard bomb. Later in the game, credit the Browns defender, Martin Emerson, for holding T. Higgins because that was another 60-yard bomb. Those are two big splash plays. And then the no call on Von Bell on the potential sack when the score was 0-0 in the second quarter with 9 minutes left was probably the biggest play of the game now looking back at it. There are critical moments in the game that the Browns capitalize on it. The next week, the week after that, the Bengals have to capitalize on it too. And I think that they're up for the task. I think that final game against the Ravens is the game that says you're in or you're out. And if I get number 9 in the playoffs, I like my chances with anybody. Jamar Chase, number 9, is Joe Burrow. Is 9-1. You know what I'm saying? Like, you get him back to the playoffs. If you can get in, that's all I need to do. And that's what I've always said since day one. It almost works in your benefit, too, in the playoffs. I will say this. Say you're a number 1 or a number 2 seed, if you had high expectations like that, that would have almost for sure put you in a spot where you had to play the Chiefs and the Bills. Going in as a wild card, you might end up just playing one of them. I have to see how it works out. I might have spoken that too soon, but I need to see the landscape of it. But you might end up just playing one of them, and that's all you really had to do last year, and that's what you got to do this year. But the key is go into the bye 5-4. Get Reader healthy, let Logan rest up, let all of our guys rest up, figure out what you're going to do at cornerback. And I think you got a really good shot. And I think let me ask you this. Do you like the Jags better than a healthy than a good Bengals team with Jamar Chase back?
No,
do you like the Colts?
No,
you know
of
what I'm
course
saying?
not.
Like,
but Zim, here's my problem, okay? And believe me, I try very hard to be an optimist. I really, really do in most cases. But can you imagine when this season started, okay, if somebody would have said to you the following names over the first 8 games of this season? These are the following names: Mitchell Trubisky, Cooper Rush, Joe Flacco, Teddy Bridgewater, Andy Dalton, Marcus Mariota, Jacoby Brissett. That those would be the starting quarterbacks your team's going to have a chance to face in the first 8 games of the year. And somebody would have then told you that the defense through the first 7 games is not going to give up a single touchdown in the second half. Of all the stats and all the people we could talk about, if I just asked you that question with those names I just gave, knowing what your defense did through the first 7, and you're only 4-4, I'm having a hard time finding it, Zim, and I'm with you on Joe Burrow. I love Joe Burrow. I was on your show last week, you and Ace Boogie.
Appreciate that.
On Cincinnati. We loved it. Loved every minute of it. We're both in agreement on Burrow. I think when he's getting help around him, I think he's the best quarterback in the AFC. Okay? But I look at the guys that are being asked to protect him. And outside of making some kind of a trade, which they have until 4 o'clock this afternoon, they have played 3 teams in their 8 games that have a legitimate pass rush. The Steelers, the Cowboys, and the Browns. And in those 3 games, that group has allowed 18 sacks. Where is that group getting better? How are they getting better? Are they going to get better?
That's a tough question because I don't think that they get better, but I think our skilled players and the players that are around them rise up and we make them pay. For all the pass rushers that want to pin their ears, the same way we did TJ Watt, Bosa, Crosby, we faced all those edge rushers last year, the best of the best, with a worse offensive line.
I don't know. I don't know if it's a worse offensive line. I'm not sure of that anymore. I know there are bigger names and you're spending a lot more money, but brother, I'm telling you, they are on pace right there to have roughly the same sacks as last year. And they ran it a hell of a lot better last year, Zim. Joe Mixon was the leading rusher in the AFC last year. And all we do is pound that offensive line from last year, in a lot of cases rightfully so. But they were good enough to have the leading rusher in the American Football Conference. That group assembled so far this year can't even get 37 yards rushing against the Cleveland Browns.
It's not that simple, though. You know, like imagine if we looked at the box score and said Joe Burrow threw for 250, 2 touchdowns. Against the Browns, you say, you probably won. You know, like, you can't really just look at the box score as it pertains to the rushing. I thought that they weren't efficient enough, but the game plan with the turnovers just got them so out of whack.
Yep.
The last 3 weeks, he's averaged 5 yards a carry, you know, for a game plan that worked in their favor. So I'm with you. Like, it has to get better, but I just don't think you could look at the box score just with the rushing because they had a game plan that I know. They wanted to throw on them guys early, get up on them, and it just backfired on them. And, you know, is that a Zach Taylor thing? Sure. But in the moment, I didn't think it was a bad thing. Like in the first 2 quarters, I thought Joe looked not as comfortable, but he looked comfortable enough. The 2 turnovers just were super unfortunate, you know, and I just think that they never really if you don't make people pay for the turnovers that you get, then, you know, like those are usually games that you lose as well, too. So it's one of those things. It's tough, man. I think the offensive line is better. I think Teddy Karras, from a leadership standpoint, blocking standpoint, cool. Alex Kappa, boom, is an upgrade, too. You got to think. Our offensive line was the worst graded offensive line, the 29th rated offensive line in all of football. You know that when we was at the Super Bowl, you know that PFF stat that they put up, and it says, and it shows Isaiah Prince, Trey Hopkins, and something, and then it says offensive tackle 30th out of 31, like offensive guard 29 out of 31. Like, that offensive line was really bad. The difference was the Bengals just got the ball out really quick and bombed teams. And I think last night they were doing a little bit of that. We just didn't see the benefits of it. Like, that T. Higgins pass interference call on the first drive hurt my soul. Like, that was a 6. And he held the dude up, and then boom. And then the other one, like, you're talking about the difference between T. Higgins walking out of that game instead of 50 yards in a touchdown, but like 180 in a touchdown. And that was the difference from last year and this year. And that's the margin of error that is played in football. And the margin is so small, and the things that are so small that they catapult on you in a snowball so quick that before you know it, you're so out of whack, you're down 18-0, and everything gets swirled into a maze. But at the end of the maze, you know what happened? I walked out of it 4-4, 1 game behind the Ravens, and as you eloquently put, 1 game behind the Patriots as far as the wild card.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Andrew brings up a great point. He says, swing game for the season to me is the Titans. He says, I believe they will win their next 2. Optimistic, Andrew, optimistic. But those 2 are the Panthers and the Steelers, okay? He says, I think you're good at 7-4 if you beat Tennessee. If you lose to Tennessee, you're 6-5, and given the end of the season schedule, I don't think they sneak in. You think that's a fair point?
That's fair, 100%. I will say this. So tunnel vision out, I'm thinking about Carolina Panthers right now. Like, I can't even – I get it, and that's what I want. And, you know, as I told you, on the path to get to the wild card.
Yep.
Based off of how bad they looked last night, I can't even fathom, like, 7-4. Like, if I'm being real.
I hear you.
To me, it's just like, beat the Panthers. You know what I'm saying? Like, just beat the Panthers, and let's get into the bye. Let's figure out some stuff. Like, that's what I would encourage any Bengals fan to do.
Okay. All right. Zim, you're the man.
Control what you can control.
You're selling hope, and everybody's looking for hope. So you the man, Zim. You the man.
Joseph Lee Burrow. Don't you ever forget the name, people. Hey, look, I'm going to tell you what. If we don't win games, I'll be damned if we ain't going to have some fun, Thom.
All right. That's why we love having you here, Zim, and we're blessed to have you. We're lucky to have you. It looks like a bright, sunny day there back in your neck of the woods. Are you still taking care of the koi? Everybody doing all right?
Hold on, let me show you.
The hell are you doing, Zim?
I want to show you something.
All right, I want to see. I want
I
to
want
see.
to show you something. How you switch the camera on?
Hey,
I'm not sure if you can.
I don't know.
You're above my pay scale. Oh, look at this. Look at
You see
the
the
woodsy
can't turn
man.
it. Yeah. Now, I was gonna show you. I live in the like I was gonna show like where it's beautiful. You gotta. I mean it. It was a rough night, rough day. I'm so sorry to hear about the Zimmer situation.
Yep.
But I wish you could see this. It's like 1,000 trees. They haven't fallen yet. You know, all the leaves haven't fallen yet. I'm still growing out here, and I'm still learning every day.
Amen, brother. Amen. Zim, you're the man. Thank you for your time today. Zim Whodey. There he is. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. He's selling hope.